It's been almost 4 years since Sea of Thieves was initially released, and it's safe to say the game has come a long way since its first days. There used to be so little to do in Sea of Thieves back in the day, not to mention the pricing of the game at the time was questionable at best. But now, Sea of Thieves has evolved into so much more, with new kinds of voyages and equipment, challenging world events, an additional trading company, a battle pass system, and even a collaboration with Disney.
Whatever they've told you, it's not true. Unless it's flattering, in which case, it's all true, but they left out the best bits.
It's safe to say Sea of Thieves is in a much better place now than it was originally. But 4 years into the game's lifespan, is it too late for you to get in on the fun? Is it worth it to buy Sea of Thieves in 2022? That's the question I hope I'm able to help you answer by the end of this video. So let's take a look at the current pros and cons of Sea of Thieves, starting with the pros. There's a little something for everybody in Sea of Thieves, whether you're a PvPer, an adventurer, or anything in between. There's player and ship combat, story-based adventures in the form of tall tales, different kinds of voyages, world events, and random spawns that keep you on your toes. There didn't used to be that much to do in Sea of Thieves, but now it's a world filled with different gameplay choices. Sea of Thieves is gorgeous, plain and simple. No joke, I can still remember the first time I launched the game back in the day, when I was sailing along, standing on the bow of my sloop and playing the hurdy-gurdy as I watched the sunset turn into a vibrantly colorful night. I had literal chills, and it was the first time in a long time that I felt that childlike sense of wonder that makes you want to explore every inch of the world. The skyboxes are beautiful, the water visuals are stunning, and never has a sunset looked so good in a game. Since January of 2021, Sea of Thieves has adopted a sort of seasonal format that surprisingly plays very nicely with the game overall. Each season typically introduces a new piece of content along with a new plunder pass. Plunder passes are the battle passes of Sea of Thieves, which have both a paid and free version. The free versions have actually had some pretty decent items in them, but most importantly, these battle passes are purely for cosmetics and don't offer any gameplay advantages. So far, this kind of format is turning out to be a great way to give players the chance to earn cool cosmetics, while also generating revenue for the developers to continue providing players with stable servers and new content. Progression in Sea of Thieves is horizontal, meaning you don't necessarily get more powerful the more you play. Instead, your hard work goes towards purchasing different cosmetics for both your character and your ship. That's it. There's no abilities or skills to level up, no talents to invest points into, or anything of the sort. Every kind of weapon, equipment, and resource is available to you from day one. This means you can jump into the game at any point and still be at a completely level playing field with every other player. Set aside the amount of experience you have playing the game, of course. Although not a thing of the past, Sea of Thieves now features a diverse set of enemies ranging from low-health mobs to more difficult boss encounters. Ocean crawlers can poison you, electrocute you, or knock you back great distances. Phantoms weave in and out of reality while fighting you. There are different kinds of skeletons with different weaknesses, and more. These enemy variations help break up the monotonous moments during island exploration, and will sometimes reward you with loot for successfully taking them down. By uniquely blending pirate life with a light form of fantasy, Sea of Thieves has laid the groundwork to expand in countless ways. This is something the developers have really started to emphasize since 2021 with the introduction of seasons. It seems they've finally found a stable workflow to deliver substantial updates to players, and it looks like with the most recent Sea of Thieves roadmap, players can expect to see some awesome new updates every few months. And by the way, did I mention that all of these massive content updates like A Pirate's Life have been completely free? Sea of Thieves is filled to the brim with unlockables in the form of commendations. So if you're an achievement hunter, you'll feel right at home in this game. Commendations cover everything from killing bosses and completing tall tales, to selling particular kinds of fish and completing event-related tasks. With so many things to do in Sea of Thieves, the game makes sure to reward you whenever you reach a particular milestone or go out of your way to investigate something interesting. As you can see, there's quite a lot to look forward to in Sea of Thieves, but that doesn't mean the game is without its drawbacks. I'll start by saying that Sea of Thieves is intended to be played in groups, so you can only expect so much from the solo experience. But as someone who typically plays Sea of Thieves solo, I can fully attest to how unforgiving it is for solo players. You can be an exceptional PvPer, but your odds of survival against groups of players are negligible at best. More hands on deck means more things can get done on your ship at any given point, whether that's changing your ship's direction, firing cannons, or repairing holes. Yes, on a bigger ship, groups generally need to be more coordinated, but more often than not, extra hands put solo players at an extreme disadvantage. If you're truly going to get anything done in your Sea of Thieves play session, you should be ready to set aside at least an hour's worth of time, if not more, each time you go to play. Sailing to islands takes time, as does completing voyages. While this greatly adds to the feeling and experience of the game world itself, it can be inconvenient for players who don't have a lot of time on their hands. A popular term in the Sea of Thieves community, getting rared refers to when the game decides to throw you an extra curveball at the most inconvenient time. Whether that means you're being chased by enemy players and a megalodon starts hunting you at the same time, a random gunpowder keg spawns in front of your ship while you're sailing, or a mob spawns on you when you're fighting someone on an island. These things happen from time to time, and to put it plainly, it sucks when they do. Aside from keeping any commendations and achievements you acquire while you're playing, if you get sunk without selling any of your loot, it's a total loss. There's no way for you to gain any sort of value from that lost loot unless you take your new ship and go steal that loot back. Player movement in Sea of Thieves can feel clunky at times, especially when you take into account scenery collision. Some objects you'll be able to press right up against, while others might have an awkward collision box that keeps you from getting too close. There's also the times where you'll be running around and immediately be brought to a halt by the tiniest rock, ledge, or board. This becomes even more frustrating if it happens while you're completing a fort and trying to fend off skeletons while you're constantly getting stuck on the terrain. Now, normally I wouldn't count occasional bugs as a con, as you can pretty much expect them now and again in every game. However, in Sea of Thieves, I run into bugs a little more frequently than what I like to think should be the norm, and sometimes they can really impact your play session. There's times your rowboat might bug out and not even be rowable. Sometimes an item might get placed down in a spot you can't pick it back up from. And oh my god, I can't even count the amount of times I've been pinched between objects during intense fights and had to respawn back on my ship. These kinds of issues won't happen every single time you play, but they happen frequently enough that I think they deserve being listed as a con. Now, obviously, I couldn't make an all-inclusive list of every possible pro and con of Sea of Thieves, and there are undoubtedly a ton more, but I wanted to touch on what are, in my opinion, some of the biggest ones that will help you decide on whether or not it's worth buying the game right now. As a veteran player, if you had to ask me, I'd tell you right now is probably the perfect time to pick up the game if you haven't already. In my opinion, Sea of Thieves is in its best state so far, and it looks to only be heading further in the right direction. While the game does have its quirks, and it might not be for everyone, more now than ever, it feels like the developers have settled into a rhythm where they can guarantee solid content to players and continue expanding upon Sea of Thieves in new and exciting ways. Ultimately, the decision to spend your hard-earned dollars is your own, but either way, I hope you find these points helpful in making that decision. Make sure to subscribe for even more Sea of Thieves content, and I hope you enjoyed.